My view is prior to the war, I was bearish, and everybody knows I own a bunch of credit default swaps. They've done well, but what I didn't expect is for interest rates to really blow out. And, I know there's this whole thing, Jay Powell's going to stay on, and I don't think it's a secret at this point that basically, he's trying to stick it to Trump, for Trump. Basically, that we're going to have a situation where interest rates are tight, oil's tight, credit spreads are tight, like independent of the war. And if you're saying, hey, the war goes away, well, if it's at 80 and gas is where it is and there's refineries offline globally, it's not necessarily going to be a situation where there's going to be this magical comeback the way there was last year. And I think the market's been Pavlovianly conditioned by Trump taco, whatever, Taco Tuesday. And I don't see, we got that 200-point bump to start the week on Monday, right, at like 6 a.m., and they faded that. And now we're back, in the 6,500s in the S&P, and it's not falling apart. So it's just a weird situation where vol's high, so it's hard to hedge. None of the hedges are working. And now it's not as easy to buy oil now as it was before. So I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, maybe it is going to stuff that's special situations or some of David's healthcare names that are not, biotechs, like seem to be getting hit by the interest rates. So David, is there anything in biotech land that's kind of on sale that's interesting, has zero to do with war?
Not. I mean, all of them have nothing to do with war.
Yeah. I get it.
Part of the reason that biotech's been doing well is I mentioned yesterday that Merck announced they were buying a small biotech company, a $7 billion deal. And this just follows Lilly announcing a deal, I think, earlier in the week. Everyone's doing deals because money's relatively cheap. And if you're Lilly and you're printing money from obesity drugs, sitting on the cash doesn't make any sense. And gosh forbid you decide to give it back to shareholders. Doing M&A is fun, right? That's the Lilly head of M&A or business development. I'm going to get some of the numbers wrong, but he said he's seeing something like 10 deals a day, and a lot of deals are being rejected by companies. And I wanted to call BS on it because the firm that reported it, they're a legit reporting firm, so I don't. They interviewed him. Just think about that. You're not seeing 5 or 10 deals a day. You just can't. That's just not true. I mean, and so there's a big profile on him in a publication talking about that. But now we can imagine two realities. It's true or it's not true. I happen to believe it's completely not true. And he's just talking up oh, look at how busy I am. I need more resources. And this article was talking about how they've turned from obesity to become a player in oncology. And it's yeah, you can become a player in oncology if you're spending money out the yin yang. But all of that said and done is there's a belief that M&A is going to solve a lot of stuff in healthcare, and that's gotten the XBI going. So I don't want to say all of it is just because it's defensive. That's why I mentioned the XLV, which is more pharma related. I like the underlying cash flow rather than the speculation of biotech. I own them both, but it is something to be aware of that biotech's going up for 2 real reasons. One is that it's a kind of safe haven, not related to the war. In that respect, that's how it's a safe haven. But it is risky because it's all development stage, and part of it is going up because people have been spending money like drunken sailors.
Yeah, I guess what my point in that question is that there is always stuff to buy, there's always stuff to do, but I think right now you have to look a little bit low. And what the other solution could be? Just do work and learn more stuff, find new names, and just think about future things to do, because it just might be one of those situations where there's not much to do right now because there's so much uncertainty that's irremovable. I was talking with our partner Steve last night. If you guys have noticed, the poly market seems to be front running the S&P in the market. Maybe develop an AI agent to just pick that off. Maybe that's the strategy.
Yeah, that's if you're an oil trader, the poly market's probably pretty good from what I hear.
Def.
No, you have
But
heard
yeah,
that story, right? Of like someone who bought tons of oil futures right before we announced something like this was.
totally. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's what I'm talking. That's what I'm referencing. It's the S&P futures and oil futures, and the poly market has a bet by the same wallet that there'll be no, like bunch of money too. Like there'll be no ceasefire by the 31st, and there'll be boots on the ground by April 30th. And then you see this tweet about how the poor millennials got screwed. Although I'm the oldest millennial, so didn't where they moved the enlistment age from 34 to 42. Which is like, why would you do that? Like, what's that about? You know what I mean? And so there's just a lot of little things that, like, if you want to believe one side, you can believe one side. If you want to believe, hey, this is not sustainable, Trump has the midterms, you can believe the other side. And I think that's where you get stuck in the middle, essentially.
Yeah, because you could look at it and say, look, if moving the 82nd Airborne is not like a little thing, like that's a major move. But everyone also knows that that's the kind of move you do if you want to negotiate and you want to pressure someone to think, oh, listen, we're going to do something. So you're right. You can see it either way. In general, if you don't know the next play, then you shouldn't be in the game. Like if you really don't know what's the phrase, if you don't know the angles, you're the one who's getting played. So that's from a movie, by the way, in case you want to look it up. But yeah, so that's kind of where I am. I mean, I did buy some of the S&P and some of the XLV and XBI, more of it in the last couple of days, but nothing major.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a difficult thing to sit on your hands, and like people are not used to like prolonged, slow-moving periods of difficult markets. It's just, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's like the max pain is this drip drop where you can't really get back to business. Your stocks can't hold a bid, and people just kind of throw their hands up at some point. So I don't know.